He leaned back in his leather chair, laughter echoing through the golden walls of the five-star restaurant. "Serve me in English and I'll pay you $1,000, he said loudly, his voice filled with mockery and arrogance. The young waitress standing before him smiled faintly, her eyes calm but unreadable. What he didn't know, what no one in that restaurant knew, was that this quiet girl was about to teach a millionaire the most priceless lesson of his life. Welcome back to Folk Tales, where real stories meet the soul and pride learns to bow before humility. Before we begin, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe if you love stories that inspire and move you. And tell us, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. We love hearing from every corner of the world. Now let's begin a story that reminds us that true intelligence doesn't need to shout. It speaks softly and changes hearts forever. The city of Paris shimmered beneath a sky that couldn't decide between dusk and evening. Streetlights flickered awake along the cobblestone lanes, and the scent of roasted coffee and rain drifted through the air. Inside Le Champ d'Or, one of the most exclusive restaurants in the city, a table had been reserved under the name Richard Lamont, a man who had built an empire from steel, oil, and ruthless ambition. He was known for his fortune, feared for his temper, and admired for the confidence that came from never being told no. Tonight, he was there to celebrate another victory, his company's expansion into Europe. He had no idea that the lesson waiting for him would be worth far more than any deal he had ever signed. She appeared beside his table quietly, a waitress no older than 23. Her name tag read Sophia. Her dark hair neatly tied back, her uniform immaculate despite the late hour. She carried herself with quiet composure, the kind of grace that didn't demand attention but drew it anyway. "Good evening, sir.
May I take your order?"
she said softly, her French accent brushing lightly against her English words. Richard looked up from his phone, amused. "Ah, another one," he muttered, leaning back. "You work in one of the finest restaurants in Paris, and still your English sounds like you're fighting it." His companion, a business associate from London, shifted awkwardly in his seat. But Richard wasn't done. "Tell you what," he said with a grin, his tone dripping with condescension. "If you can serve us perfectly in English without a single mistake, I'll give you $1,000. How's that?" The words rippled through the restaurant. A few diners turned to glance over. Sophia blinked once, processing the challenge. Her lips curved into a small, polite smile. $1,000? she asked. "Yes," Richard said smugly, crossing his arms. $1,000 cash. Let's see if you're worth it." She met his eyes calmly. "Very well, sir," she said. "Challenge accepted." From that moment, she moved with quiet precision. "Would you prefer your wine chilled or at room temperature?" she asked. "The soup of the day is roasted pumpkin with truffle oil." Each sentence was crisp, fluent, and effortless. There were no hesitations, no grammatical slips, not even the faintest hint of nerves. As the meal continued, her composure never wavered. Richard found himself listening more closely than he expected. His grin faltered, replaced by curiosity. He had expected broken sentences, awkward phrasing, maybe a mistake he could laugh about later. But instead her words were smooth as silk, confident and clear. When dessert arrived, Sophia presented the plates gracefully. "Your chocolate soufflé, sir, lightly dusted with powdered sugar, served with a side of vanilla bean cream." Even his British associate clapped softly, impressed. Richard gave a short laugh, though it sounded more like disbelief than amusement. "Well," he said, pulling out his wallet, "you've earned it. I suppose I owe you $1,000. He began counting the bills, but Sophia's soft voice stopped him. "Before you pay me, sir," she said gently, "may I speak freely for just a moment?" Richard raised a brow. "Go ahead." She took a breath, and then, to everyone's surprise, her voice changed. "Merci beaucoup, monsieur," she said in flawless French. "Votre patience et votre gentillesse sont très appréciées." Her tone was warm, fluid, perfectly native. Richard froze. Then she continued, switching smoothly to Italian, describing the intricate balance of flavors in their dessert, her words like music. Before he could react, she turned to address another nearby guest in Spanish, thanking them for visiting. Then, without pause, she slipped into German, her pronunciation precise and commanding. Finally, she looked back at Richard and spoke softly in Japanese, her words gentle, melodic, and hauntingly beautiful. The restaurant had gone utterly still. The clinking of glasses, the hum of background music, all had faded into silence. Sophia stood there, hands clasped, waiting for him to speak. Richard's mouth opened slightly, but no words came. "You asked me to serve you in English for $1,000, she said quietly, returning to his language. "But tell me, sir, what would you pay to understand the world?" For a long moment he said nothing. The arrogance that once sat like armor on his shoulders melted away. His business partner looked down, ashamed for not speaking up earlier. Around them, diners exchanged glances, some smiling, some teary-eyed. Finally, Richard cleared his throat and whispered, "I owe you much more than $1,000. She smiled gently. "No, sir," she said. "You owe me nothing. Just respect." And with that, she turned and walked away, her steps light, her head held high. Later that night, Richard couldn't sleep. Her words replayed in his mind over and over. What would you pay to understand the world? He had spent his life buying everything, houses, cars, power, but suddenly, he realized he had never bought wisdom. He had dismissed people because of their accents, their clothes, their jobs, and now, a girl with a tray and a tired smile had stripped his ego bare with nothing but truth. The next morning, he returned to Le Champ d'Or. Sophia was there again, arranging cutlery before the breakfast rush. When she saw him, her eyes widened slightly, but she didn't flinch. He approached slowly and placed an envelope on the table. "For you," he said. Inside was a note, not a check, but a letter. It read, "You opened my eyes in 5 languages. Let me open a door for you in one. Study wherever you wish. I will take care of the rest." Tears glistened in her eyes as she read. "Why?" she whispered. He smiled faintly. "Because humility is a language I'm still learning," he said. Years passed. Sophia graduated from the University of Cambridge. Mastering 8 languages in total, she became a translator for the United Nations, bridging voices across borders, and Richard Lamont, once the man who laughed at accents, became one of her greatest advocates, funding language programs for underprivileged students around the world. At every ceremony he credited her. "A young woman once reminded me," he would say, "that fluency means nothing without understanding." One afternoon, as Sophia stood before a crowd of diplomats and students, she shared her story, not to shame but to inspire. "Language," she said, "isn't just about words. It's about listening. It's about seeing people not for what they lack, but for what they carry inside. Pride divides us. Respect unites us." And somewhere in the back of that hall sat Richard, quietly smiling, his eyes misty. He had once thought wealth could buy him everything, but in the end, it was a waitress with 5 languages and an unshakable grace who taught him the one truth he'd been too proud to learn. The richest hearts often belong to those who serve, not those who command.